What's up, everybody? It's Eric. I'm back for another rookie profile, looking at the data profile for Israel Abinikanda. We're going to look at data profile. We'll circle back to film later this week. So right now, we're just going to focus on his analytical profile as such. And again, these aren't all data points that I include in my model, but they're points that are interesting for me to look at, to see what his role was in college, what was his usage, how did he fit into the running back room at Pitt, and are there lessons to be learned that we can help project him to the next level. So that's what I'm looking at here. So we'll launch right in. Israel Abinikanda is a junior running back out of Pittsburgh, 5'11", 215 pounds. His career production: 390 attempts, 2,177 yards, 28 touchdowns. How do these compare to the thresholds of the average of players for the top 24 season? Again, my data set goes back about 12 years. I use the largest data set I can for things like this, right? So it dwindles a little bit when I get into talking about efficiency numbers. I'm only using 4 or 5 years of figures for those, but the bulk of this data is a pretty large data set. And again, I use the top 24 backs instead of top 12, just to have more data points. I'm not sure if I'll regret that. I'll say one thing I've noticed is there's some guys in there with just really low reception totals, really low receiving numbers, that would not have made my data set if I was only looking at top 12 running backs. So a little bit of an aside there. So how does Izzy compare here? Well, he's a little bit low on all of these. And, part of that has to do with him being in a committee for all of his time at Pittsburgh. Is that an attitude, a game plan by the coaches, or could he not outcompete his backfield mates there? We don't know. So I lean towards it being, scheme and, a part of the offense. But there was some other good players there, particularly this year. There were some other excellent running backs at Pitt. So, the 390 attempts, a little low, 2,177 yards, a little bit low. I'm looking for 3,200-ish, and 28 touchdowns, actually pretty close. I'm looking for around 30 touchdowns. So, good touchdown score. Does he have a nose for the end zone? I don't know. Touchdowns aren't that sticky, but for running backs, there certainly are backs that excel at the goal line. So that could be a role for Izzy. His career receiving production is not terrible. It's not great. It's not terrible. With 38 receptions, 354 yards, and 4 touchdowns for his career. Again, not terrible. Usually I like to see a season with, around 30 receptions, which I don't think Izzy ever had. 24 was his best in his sophomore year. But, again, there's plenty of guys in college that don't work much as receiving backs that then go on to be just fine in the NFL. His production market share numbers, a 38% dominator is excellent. That's great. Anything over 30% is worthwhile. 66% rush yards market share. That's phenomenal. I mean, my composite top 24 back has, 55%, 57%. So, it's a really strong number out of Izzy. Check that. Yeah. 48%. Anything over 48% is great. 7% reception market share. That's a low figure. It's not a death sentence, but I certainly would like to have seen more receiving game work from him. But again, a change in coordinator his junior year. There was other backs there that were excellent receiving backs that maybe took a bit of that work from him. So I'm not going to worry about it too much. 5.19 yards per touch. Yards per touch, it doesn't go, I don't know. It's not the most important number. I do put yards per touch in my model. It does have some predictive capacity for me, but you can't look at it in a vacuum, right? There's plenty of backs that were hyper efficient in college that weren't good NFL players. So 5.19, it's, within a range that is tolerable for me, but it's certainly a little bit of a lower number than we typically see from backs that are going to have a big impact in the NFL. But Akers had a number lower than that. David Montgomery was in that range. So it's not as though there aren't successful players we could look at with those kinds of numbers. 2.13 yards per carry over team. That's good. That's a great number. 2.67 yards per created. 2.67 yards created. Also a good number, not outstanding. 2.68. That's about what I'm looking for. 2.94 rather is what I'm looking for a career number. So he's in the name. He's in the realm. 0.26 rush yards over expected per attempt. It's a little bit low. I'm looking for around 0.35. 2.09 adjusted yards per team play. That's a best season figure. I'm looking for about 2.2. So, again, it's fine. He's in the realm. 0.20 EPA per play. I'm looking for about 0.3. So he's a little low on some of the efficiency numbers. It's nothing to worry about, or rather it's not everything, but I certainly prefer rushers that are efficient rushers in college. But again, it's not everything. So let's take a look at his elusive statistics. 46 missed forced tackles. It's an okay number. It's not a phenomenal number, particularly for a guy that we think of as a little bit more of a bruiser. We've seen him do it. If you watch his tape, you'll certainly see him shake off some tackles. But statistically, doesn't seem to be the strongest point of his profile. 3.62 yak per attempt. Again, kind of a weak number for a guy that we think of as, or at least I think of as more powerful of a back. Looking for about 4.17 here. So he's substantially under that mark. 1.18 yards per route run. That's a lower number. But again, I'm not freaking out about that. It's easy for me to point to a high yards per route run, even if there's not a lot of receiving work, and be interested in that number. But whereas he's a little bit low on both, it projects as a little bit weaker of a receiving profile. 44% breakaway rate. That's, right about what I'm looking at for a threshold, 45%. So what's this all mean? What's the totality of this data profile telling me about Izzy Abinikanda? There's some nice things about it. Certainly, the production market share numbers are really nice. I'd love to see more efficiency out of him. If he's not going to have overwhelming receiving work in college, I would have loved to see more dominant rushing efficiency. So overall, the data profile, it's not terrible. Like I said, there's guys that this compares to more like David Montgomery type profile, although Montgomery broke a ton of tackles. But there's certainly guys, that this comps to. I don't know if it projects him as a lead in a committee. To me, it's a little bit weaker. Like I've talked about this earlier as being kind of, these are my fourth tier guys. Just based on a data profile, Izzy might be a little more towards the back of that tier. I know a lot of people are crazy high on his film, and man, the highlights are high. We'll get into that a little bit more when we do Izzy's film profile later this week. So again, If you appreciate this content, please like, please subscribe. Let me know what you'd like me to talk about on here. And otherwise, I'll see you on the next one.